different types of joints in the body. You'll have a ball and socket joint like your shoulders and hips that gives you that rotation or movement. You'll have saddle joints that are like the base of the thumbs that move back and forth. You have hinge joints like the elbows and the knees. Very straightforward there what those are. More complicated joints like the condyloid joints that are in your jaw and your finger that basically move, but they don't rotate. Then you'll have pivot joints like your neck going back and forth, pivoting around a ring. And then you'll have gliding joints that are like your wrists that glide across a plane. These are the type of joints in your body, and all of them are supported by different elements that we'll talk about later. What else do joints do? They provide structural support to your body. They help maintain your integrity and the stability of your skeleton because as you move, there's friction, there's impact, there's compression that has to happen, and it helps all of that happen without problems occurring or pain or stiffness. You're not walking like the Tin Man out there. Joints really are what help you be able to do that because they're distributing that mechanical load or that pressure that happens just with everyday movement across bones and soft tissues that allow that to happen at all and makes it really smooth while also bearing weight, absorbing shock, a lot of things. You put your body through so much. Even just getting up and walking every day, you are putting your body through a lot. And your joints play such a pivotal role. It's not just about bending your arm. They do so much more within your body. You know, there are some joints like in the vertebrae of your spine that actually play a protective role, like protecting your spinal cord. Now, if you go to it, you know, in simple, they also connect bones. They're held together by ligaments that connect bone to bone. So they're in between those bones as they connect. And then they're supported by tendons. We're going to talk a little bit about these things here in a minute. Tendons help support the bone, connect the bone to the muscle itself. Again, all playing a key role in overall movement throughout your body. One of the things that I think we've touched on overall, but very, very important, is they facilitate flexibility and range of motion overall in your body. When you look at joints, you know, the structure of the joint determines how much movement. We talked about that structure, those joint diagrams I showed you. Cartilage, which we're going to talk about a lot because that's so critical to the health of your joints. But cartilage plays a critical role. It covers the ends of bones and provides a smooth surface for movement, while the synovial fluid within them helps lubricate them. We're going to go a lot more into cartilage here in just a second because it is such an important piece to understand if you're going to go on and understand how our supplements play a role in joint health throughout the body. So when we talk about movement, muscles and tendons play a key role. Muscles contract to move the bones with the joints, and then the tendons come in and transmit force, which enables movement as well. So all of these things work together. We talk about this all the time when it comes to the body about how everything needs to be working together. And that's where multiple supplements always come into play because there's different things that require different nutrition in order to be properly supported. And that's why, again, it's so important to understand the different elements of joints and the body itself as you're learning about them. So before I dive into the next section, so, you know, here again, there's a lot of things that play in. There's ligaments. There's even sensory receptors in the joints that help provide feedback to the brain that helps that movement go. All of the joints are not just, you know, I used to think of them as just, you know, bones meeting bones and they help you move and your knee bends. They are so much more complicated than that and require so much more support, and they impact just your daily life so much. So Krista, can you before we go into detail about the first thing that joints are made of, which is cartilage, can you give me a layman's view of what cartilage is? Just simplify it for us before we go deep.
Absolutely. So cartilage is your cushion. It's your cushion between your bones that makes it so instead of grinding like gears, like metal gears, it makes it nice and soft. It's that pretty cushion that makes it comfortable to move.
Perfect. Exactly. I think that cushion is the best description here. You can even see it here in the visual that we'll talk about here. We'll also talk about the tendons, we'll talk about ligaments, and we'll talk about nerves, but let's go into cartilage. So here you can see that green part in the picture there is that cushion that Krista mentioned. It's a strong, flexible connective tissue that protects the bones and joints as you move. And it acts as this shock absorber that reduces friction and prevents bones from rubbing together. Because if bones are rubbing together, you'll hear that grinding sound that will cause pain, inflammation, and damage. You don't want that. If you're feeling grinding or having that type of pain, it means there's something wrong there, because cartilage is there to prevent that type of feeling. One of the things that it also does is it helps keep your joints, it keeps them in shape, like when you're moving. You think of joints as in your arms and your knee, but there's even joints in your rib cage, your spine. There's so much that has to play in as you move, and that cushion allows you to have that flexibility, be able to absorb friction, absorb shock, or any sort of motion that comes into play when you are moving. Now, an important thing to note that I thought was interesting is cartilage has no blood supply, which means it will heal very, very slowly. And it requires a lot of support to allow the natural processes within your body to help restore and repair them. Now, in order to know how cartilage can be repaired and restored, I think it's important to understand what makes up cartilage at all. So what are the key components of cartilage? And listen to this part, because there'll be some things I talk about here that you'll want to reference as we get into Replenix Extra Strength, as we get into Replenix Advanced, because they play key roles in supporting some of these elements that are the makeups of cartilage itself. So the first thing are what are called chondrocytes. Chondrocytes, it's a big word, it's a complicated word, but what they are is they are the cells that are responsible for producing and maintaining what is called the cartilage matrix. They're responsible, they're in charge. They're the general of the army. They are in charge of making sure it is under control and it is healthy. The chondrocytes are an important part of keeping your cartilage healthy. Now, the other part is what is called an extracellular matrix in the simplest form. There are more medical terms out there for this, but that's a simpler way to think about it. And that extracellular matrix is made up of some pretty important things that give cartilage its strength, flexibility, and resilience. So I'm going to go into these a little bit. So the first thing is collagen fibers. I think all of us have heard this word collagen. A lot of times it's pertaining to the skin, but collagen plays such a critical role in the joints. It is actually the scaffolding that gives joint tissue their shape and strength. Collagen, what it does is it's this scaffolding that goes around what are called protoglycans. We'll talk about proteoglycans that we'll talk about just in a second. And what it does is it enables the tissue of the cartilage to resist compression. And it allows movement without overstretching or tearing. It limits swelling that can be caused by the proteoglycans that we'll also talk here about just in a second. So let's talk about this word proteoglycans that I'm talking about, that I've said many times. So proteoglycans are what give the cartilage its compressive strength. It also provides hydration and structural integrity to the cartilage. And they're essential for smooth movement. Think of like the collagen being a cage around. So we talk about it being scaffolding, and inside that cage are what are these called proteoglycans, which attract and absorb water. And so as they fill with water, they expand, and then collagen moves in and helps them contract. And so there's this expanding and contracting motion that happens with the interaction between those collagen and the proteoglycans in that cartilage tissue. And it's a really cool movement that works together. These proteoglycans, what's really cool about these is not only do they attract and bind water molecules, but they can actually signal out to other molecules like growth factors or what are called cytokines, which are part of the immune system. And that is a really, really important fact when we get into Replenix Advance, because the immune system plays a key role in the functionality of Replenix Advance, and these proteoglycans and their ability to attract and signal the cytokines within that immune system is so, so important. Another key factor within cartilage is water. I mean, so many people, water's important. You have to drink so much water a day. Your body is made up of so much water. You hear this all the time. But water plays a critical role. It actually makes up 65 to 80%, depending on who you are and what your body makeup is. But it takes up about 65 to 80% of cartilage weight. Um, and most of the water in the cartilage is bound by molecules like the proteoglycans I talked about, but some is free moving that allows for the fluid exchange to happen. And what it does is it really gives that movement, that glide. It provides just a lot of smoothness and lubrication within the joints that allows them to move. So having adequate water content within the joints is really important. And the proteoglycans have to be healthy in order to allow that to happen. So that was a lot of information, a lot of science, right? I geek out about it. Maybe some of you are like, oh my gosh, that's too much. Let's break it down super simple. So if we look at cartilage, you have the chondrocytes, which are the builders. They help build the cartilage up. Then you have collagen plus the proteoglycans that act as the scaffolding and the shock absorbers. Then you add the water, which gives flexibility and cushioning. Pretty simple overall. All of that make up what is called the cartilage structure of the overall joint, but really important. And this is probably the most critical part of understanding Replenix and Replenix Extra Strength. All right, we're going to keep going here because I want to make sure we get through everything. We'll keep this other part a little more simple because it's not as important to our supplements, but the other part of a joint is what is a tendon. And I'm going to speak specifically, tendons transmit force between muscles and bones. They provide elastic energy that pretty much it's what allows you to move. The muscles pull on those tendons that moves your bones that allow that movement to happen. They help with the shock absorption, they help with stability, and they're highly resistant to tearing. But if they are injured, it can cause some pretty serious problems. If anybody heard of like different tendons being broken or strained, it's pretty painful and takes quite a while to recover from. But tendons play a really important role. Key makeups of tendon, you'll recognize a lot of this. So the tendinite cells, just like the chondrocytes, are what help to really build the overall structure of the tendon, but then it has its own matrix built up of collagen. If you look at cartilage, it's mainly built up of type 2. Tendons are built up of type 1 that provides the strength. It has the proteoglycans that help organize and buffer the load. Elastin plays an important part that gives its stretch and rebound. And then water gives it its mobility and compliance. Again, even if you have healthy joints, if your tendons aren't also working, movement's going to become a lot more difficult for you. And then one of the last things I'll talk about here are going to be the ligaments. So ligaments are the strong fibrous connective tissues that connect the bones to the bones at the joints. And they help really stabilize and guide the overall motion of the movement.